Man, uNrekt. Thank goodness.
Good evening and welcome to the HEX Late Show. It's 43 OG here with you, coming to you from Melbourne, Australia on a Tuesday evening. What's been happening? We've had an action-packed week in HEX, in PulseX, in Pulse. We've had the launch phase of the PulseX sacrifice end on the 10th of, well, not end, but the penalty-free part of the launch phase end on the 10th of January. The last 4 days, we've had the Maddie Allen's Expo, with 4 days of just back-to-back talks from lots of people in the HEX community. Fantastic talks, a lot of information, and we've got a great show for you tonight. We've got the regulars in the wings, so I'll just bring these guys up. Just give me 1 second. We have Bluey.
Right.
How are you, mate?
Very, very good. Actually, before I forget, big shout out to anyone watching on DLive. They were feeling a little bit left out last time, and just wanted to say we appreciate everyone watching, even it's from all the other platforms. And DLive is always going to be one that's always has a special place in our heart, since we spent a lot of time on DLive back in the early days. And I
think I still have lemons in an account somewhere. I still have lemons.
I spent all my lemons, and I spent them all to try to get more lemons because like if you win it you get more or something, and then I think it was on Discourse. And then they never ended up giving the prizes for the person who gave the most lemons. And so I just nuked my whole lemon stack.
Well, let's bring up the rest of the crew, hey. We've got Jexxa.
Hey guys, how you going?
Sammy.
Hey,
hello.
Sammy.
Yes. Good to see you. Hey, everyone.
Guys. How are we?
Good, good.
Yeah, excellent.
How are you? 43.
Pretty good. Pretty good. I was saying to you in the green room before that, trying to be fit and healthy in 2022, but on the weekend I had a kebab and things just went to hell from there on.
Dodgy kebab, eh?
Always tomorrow.
Let me just bring. We got Tangent here as well. What's going on, Tangent?
Yeah, what's happening?
Oh, party man. Can't hear you, mate.
You're
muted, mate.
I was going to say, Bloobum, do you recognize this T-shirt?
Yeah.
And the only other thing I said was, hello, how is everyone?
Nice.
You've
Really
got yourself
well.
a whole new following on Twitter now, haven't you, mate?
How do you mean? Oh, I know what you're talking about.
You've carved out a very special niche.
I know, right? Yeah, I never thought non-crypto content would blow up like that, but the highest number of likes I've got, aside from my pinned tweets, are these photos and videos of these parties that I've been going to.
I don't understand why, mate. I cannot figure it out.
That's like aspiring crypto user content. That's what people are aspiring to, mate. So
Yeah, right.
I've got someone in the chat saying, "Where is uNrekt?" uNrekt is a pirate, man. He's out there somewhere. He's out there somewhere.
Out on the high seas.
Yeah.
Hey, uNrekt does not follow any rules. He turns up when he feels like it. And when he turns up, we're always happy to have him because it's his show. I should say it's our show. It's our show. It's all of our shows. But yeah, look,
That was a key founding.
Occasionally he returns to port every now and then and shows his head.
Yep, that's what happens. So guys, you two, Jexxa and Tangent, you guys were a part of the Hexpo, and was it on day 2 that you were on the social?
Yep.
Yeah, Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say we really have to just shout out Matty Allen for putting that together. What a
yeah,
great job
yeah.
he was.
Yeah,
That's the
well
second.
done.
Massive.
That's the second like virtual conference he's put together. They've both been 4 days long, and they're just a great way that the community comes together online, and we get to see this year. We saw a whole lot of faces I hadn't seen before, and a lot of smart people. I don't know if you guys have listened to that talk from Dev Ruth. You listened to that? Yep. Just great stuff. Like, you learn a lot listening to these guys, and there's a lot of info out there. So
But is that whole thing out? Is it just the 15 minutes?
no, the whole thing is out.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
It's on Matty Allen's. Yeah. Now I'm not sure. I'm getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, I can hear a bit of fuzz there.
It's not me because my mic is muted.
Someone just stopped it, whoever did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sammy, it's you.
Is it me?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I'll
It's a
mute.
bit like a computer just booting up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Just background noise. Yeah, definitely.
So I have a let me see if I can bring up this clip. It's a clip that let me see if I got this. Okay, are we ready? Let's see. There we go.
Richard, I would also have a question for you. What would you like to see from the Hexagon community in 2022?
Look, we've been starving for fiat on-ramps for a long time. Solve the fiat on-ramp issue. So there's only 26 states where you need a money transmitter license. You live in a state, either work with your local money transmitter and get them to start selling HEX, or get a license and start selling HEX, or all these other awesome things that are coming up, PulseChain, et cetera. It's profitable. You can make a lot of money doing it, and we need it because the rest of the world just isn't good at their job. So, I would rather send hexagons to other hexagons for awesome stuff than send them to the meat grinder. Oh, look, the margin trading meat grinder where they're going to sell you every horrible thing that will destroy you. I don't like sending hexagons to go get ground up. So I think fiat on-ramps is something that the hexagons can really take care of. And I think that, outbound messaging and marketing, you guys can really take care of. Look, how many millionaires are there in HEX? It's your job to pump your own bags. So you can have expectation of profit from the work of yourself. So go do some work and get the word out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some words from Richard Hart there. So, like he's put out the gauntlet. And he said, guys, we need to get some fiat on ramps. That's what we need. That's what we need in HEX. That's what we need in Pulse. And it's up to us. It's up to us.
I'd like to say,
make it happen.
I'd like to say something here because I put out tweets trying to encourage everyone to rally around and work on fiat on ramps, and I got so much hate from the Hexagon community saying, "Oh, this is bullshit. We don't need them. We don't need exchanges. Richard doesn't want it. If we wanted it, we'd have it." So I think everyone just needs to understand that if we don't have those, you're missing out on so much of the market that you could capture. We've got people that want to get involved, and I literally just answered a question a moment ago before I jumped on stream. Someone needs a more efficient way to get into HEX. You need to be able to do it easily without all the fees that everyone's getting clobbered with. So if you think it's not a legitimate need, you need to...
Well, you've heard it. We've just heard it from Richard himself.
Yep.
That is what we need. That is what we need. It's going to reduce the friction, to a great extent. Will make it easier for people to get in, and that's just going to mean more people buying Pulse and HEX and all the other tokens.
So the barrow that I was trying to push was I was targeting the Kraken exchange. And anyone that's listened to this show will know why I was targeting that show, because I did talk about it, but I'll just quickly take a minute to cover that again. Kraken they're able to operate in nearly every jurisdiction you would want on the planet. So Australia, the Eurozone, US, where else do they have? Great British Pound. So they were covered in all the key areas where the majority of crypto users are. If you can get one exchange like that to tumble and get them to list HEX, and I was trying to get them to, with a long-term view of looking at all the Pulse assets as well, which is in Kraken's best interest to do that. But if you get that one exchange, which has been around a long time, but it's not going anywhere, I don't think. Yeah, they've all got their pros and cons, but that one is probably got a really good footprint. If we can just keep hammering those guys and just chipping away, keep requesting it. If you don't request it and say you want it there, they don't know that there's the demand. You've got to show them that there's demand.
Yeah.
How did it
Hey.
go? How did it go with
Can
the
I-
numbers on those metrics? Like
I don't know. I'd have to go back and have a look at the tweets again.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean-
we put a thing in our HEX Australia chat today. We all got in there and stalked CoinSpot's tweets with list HEX. So if anyone's listening, jump into the HEX Australia chat, and there's a tweet that you can copy just requesting to list HEX, because apparently that's how they list coins.
Right. Actually, I'll talk about two things on that. So yeah, guys, just go out and hammer them from a social perspective, because we're having meetings with them in the background anyway regarding Pulse and liquid loans and HEX. So if you guys are chipping away at the front end, and we can work the angles on the back end with the operators, at least the business will see it from both sides. They'll have their support channel saying, "Oh, everyone's hitting us up about HEX," and you'll have the back end guys that are the decision makers saying, "Yeah, well, we're actually chatting with these guys. So if we attack them from all angles, that's a really good approach." Now, the issue CoinSpot have in particular is they need a liquidity pool to be able to tap into, and HEX doesn't have that great liquidity pool that they can reach into at the moment. But hey, we'll just keep chipping away, and look, they may. We've got to find out a little bit more about their requirements. So if we can,
I actually think that just Pulse is enough. Like in my opinion, if we can get Pulse on, that's going to be what's going to break down some walls. I think some barriers.
And I know we're going to talk about this later on tonight. I think is about the amount of money that's gone into these sacrifices. So if you can show an exchange that there's 19 billion worth of funds sitting in the PulseChain address at the moment, and in PulseX address, I think we're up around the 1 billion or so. I haven't looked at that.
It would have to be close.
And with the Pulse one, funds have been removed though, right? So like that's actually not even the full amount.
Yeah, don't know, and a lot of that may be HEX in there as well. So obviously they'll
don't quote me, but I thought I did see the amount of ETH in the address and other coins going down over time.
Were they sold into stables or removed?
I can't remember, but I was just looking at two. You know how when you're on Etherscan, you can see the amount of ETH, and you can see that in the drop-down box before you fold it out, it says the total amount. I definitely remember times where I refreshed and those numbers went down, by more than just what you would expect from price fluctuations, like volatility within the market. So I'm pretty sure funds did leave, but
not too sure on that.
So there's
don't quote me on that.
874 mil in the PulseX sacrifice so far.
I'm saying that's a good thing, by the way, Jexxa. I'm saying
that's just
that
Ethereum.
The number you would be quoting would be low, it's actually higher than.
No, I agree. Yeah.
And that number there doesn't include a lot of the other chains that have sacked, hey?
Yeah, that's just Ethereum.
Correct.
That's just. And also, I just noticed now the top address was 37 mil, and now it's 47 mil. Or it was 32
it's been
mil.
been like that for a couple of days, I think.
Has it? Okay.
Yeah.
I actually haven't checked it for a couple of days. Yeah.
I thought Rakam came in at the last minute and smashed that out of the park and took the number one position with 30-something mil.
And I think he wasn't done. He topped up.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Very nice. So
$500 million in HEX. $500 million in HEX, over $500 million.
Off the market now.
Not just HEX. Oh, did you say $500 million in how? Are you just checking the actual
$500
HEX
million.
amount? Yeah, cool.
$500 million worth of HEX. And Richard made the comment, he didn't say that it was guaranteed, obviously because he can't, but he implied that it was likely that the behavior of those addresses would continue in the same way, i.e. not dumping HEX. So that's a lot of diamond-handed HEX. A lot.
Yep.
A lot.
It's it is 2 billion diamond-handed HEX.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, that's a lot of HEX, eh? That's a lot of HEX.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's huge.
That's 4 days of the adoption amplifier just there. 4 days of the adoption amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So
Wait,
I think
what did you say? Day 43, 4 days
of the adoption amplifier, because it was 500 mil a day.
But this is in dollars, not in HEX. Right?
No, it was 2 billion HEX.
Oh, 2 billion. Oh, sorry. 2 billion. Yeah. Well, you're just talking about this sacrifice address for PulseX. You're not including the.
That's correct.
Sorry, I thought the reason why the number went up when you said that just then was because you were including the PulseChain sacrifice as well. So you're talking.
How much was the PulseChain?
Agree 100% on everything.
How much was that? How many HEX was sacrificed in the PulseChain?
HEX. Oh, we could go have a
It
look.
should be in that. It should be in that.
I can get it quick actually.
There's from that website you're on.
Marked.
Well, from that website you can jump across, I think.
Oh, can I?
So in the original sacrifice address for PulseChain, there currently is 113 billion HEX.
113 billion. Oh,
113 billion HEX
gotcha.
in the original PulseChain sacrifice address. I know it's getting a little bit confusing now because I've even heard Richard trip up and say PulseX when he actually meant Pulse. I don't know if you guys heard that in the most recent interview. I think because obviously the names are so similar. Like he even used to do it between HEX and Pulse because he had HEX on his mind so much that he would say HEX and he actually meant Pulse. But now obviously they've even got the same word in the name, so it's like a little bit confusing. So
PulseX and PulseX sound so similar that it stuffs people up.
Yeah.
So
but 113 billion, that's not small. That's not a small amount of HEX that just got diamond handed.
Yep. That's
what are our predictions for the next until the 25th of Feb? What do we think is going to happen? I mean, it's still relatively. I mean, it's only been a couple of days since the or 1 day since that penalty has come in. So there's still time for people to sacrifice. If the price was to pump and like enough to make up for it, people could still come in and sacrifice more if they wanted to.
Yeah, definitely. I think people are they've gone through this once before, so they've probably been a little bit wiser this time in terms of getting it in the first 5 days or first whatever how many days it was, 10 days in this instance.
I agree with that, man.
What an amazing achievement, though. Like, think about it. Look at that. That's what people had in their wallets, and they've sacrificed it. $874 million, and it says a lot about it says a lot about the community that are interested in this, but it also says a lot. I mean, in part, I think a lot of it is also to do with freedom of movement and freedom of speech, and that's something that freedom of assembly, which is something that we've all dealt with in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Oh, if you had have asked me, was PulseX going to be a larger sacrifice than PulseChain, I would have said no.
Same.
But obviously been proven wrong. And I think what that shows is a lot of pent-up demand for people that actually also want Pulse. So they missed out on Pulse, and this is their chance to
it's a good move.
Catch up there.
It's a good move. I mean, it was, if you think about the people that were still sacrificing for Pulse after that bonding curve just kept going up and people were still sacrificing, I think it was a very smart move to bring this along. And also I think it's good that Richard has put out there that, hey guys, before the bridge, before there's a bridge, maybe it's an idea for you. You can swap over some PulseX for some Pulse if that's what you really want. You know, just putting that idea out there. I think that's a good move if you're wanting some Pulse.
Well, you know, I've been in the PulseX ad chat, so I'm an admin in there now, and you know, a lot of people are just buying it because they didn't get into Pulse and they're going to swap it before the grid. But there is a few people that are accidentally sent to the PulseChain sacrifice instead. So if you're watching, don't do that. Because you'll be 50% worse off today.
All right. So
I found that my like in real life friends, because obviously over time I have just become more and more confident to recommend Richard Hart projects to people that I know in real life. Just, you know, it's become more and more obvious that everything's legit, and so yeah, that my friends had zero problems. I told them to hit me up if they had any trouble at all, and they all just went straight through, and I just got messages saying like, yep, I've done my sacrifice, with no, like, they never had to ask me, hey, like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And these are mostly no coiners who have never used MetaMask and have never used any, like, have not really been involved in crypto at all, and they just had zero problem with it. So the instructions the instructions on the site must either be like really clear, or maybe my friends are like above average intellect or something, but whatever it is, it was just easy as.
That's it.
Man, it's good. I had a fair few people in my crew like pretty much sacrificed as well for this one. Whereas the last one, you know, there was still a few ums and ahs here and there. But I think that thing of missing out on the Pulse and having this opportunity, they weren't going to miss out on this one.
Yeah, that's exactly the feeling I've seen through my circles as well. Is people, like, they're invested in HEX. They've come along and they've heard about the sacrifice on Pulse, but didn't get a chance. So yeah, this is make up time space now, and don't miss out on this one. And
I mean, one thing we didn't see though with the PulseChain was how many people were coming into it and were just FOMOing into it even after it all ended. You know what I mean? Like, and for like it has continued right up until now, and there's no reason that wouldn't happen in this case as well.
Well, that's what I think. You would think it would be more reasonable for people to not to stop putting it into the Pulse sacrifice address and go straight into this one now.
No, what I'm saying is that like there's people still finding out about PulseX, and like I'm meeting people who have just been PulseX is the first thing they've heard about of a Richard Hart project.
Is that right?
Yeah, and
yeah, I can believe that.
He was actually being recommended to go into it via BNB because of the fees were so cheaper that way.
Yep. I think quite a number of people did, to be honest. I haven't had a look at the chat to see how.
Yeah, shout out to the guys in the chat. Big shout out. We've got a few regulars in there. What's up, fellas?
I wouldn't be surprised if that word it's spreading, keeps spreading, and people keep sacking for PulseX, even though the rate is going up so much.
So guys,
just it's only 5% a day.
At what point?
Yeah,
but it ramps up a lot. But at what point is it no longer worth sacrificing and just worth saying, "Hey, I'm just going to buy the HEX"? Because do you guys agree that, like, apart if you're not going to sacrifice, the best next move is just to buy HEX if you want Pulse, and then when it opens up, just swap your HEX for Pulse, right? Would you agree?
If you've got
I think Brand's video was the best answer to that, and it's that you should never be recommending that, like, as in that should not be a comment that anyone makes to anyone else, because it's different for everyone, and because you don't know the future, there are variables in there that you cannot predict, and so to say to someone like, definitely don't sacrifice now, one, you're giving financial advice, because as Richard said, when you tell someone not to buy something, that's also financial advice, and you just don't know how things are going to play out. I mean, obviously it got to a point with the other one, once it got over like 600x or whatever rate decrease, it was pretty obvious to be like, yo, this is very likely a very bad idea to be sacrificing now. But this one only goes to 10x, right? This one only goes to only 10x change. So
there is going to be a liquidity pool for it. There's going to, like, as Richard has said, that you're going to be able to swap your PulseX for Pulse before the bridge opens. So you would think that you would be able to swap other tokens for Pulse or PulseX. Like if there's a liquidity pool for PulseX to Pulse, you'll also be able to swap HEX. Like there'll be a liquidity pool for Pulse to HEX.
Yeah, the reality is
anything, but you don't know which one's going to outperform. You could be swapping to the one that performs worse.
You don't know. Yeah, you don't know. But if you get to a point, let's say you get to a point on the 20th of or the 18th of Feb, right? And you're like, we're at, I don't know what we're going to be at there. Maybe we're 7x, 8x, right? And you might be like, well, if I just buy HEX, I'm going to get a copy on the Pulse side. So I'm going to get a copy I'm going to have a copy on Ethereum. I'm going to have a copy on Pulse side. And then I can just swap it over on PulseX exchange for some PulseX or Pulse if I really want some. Not giving financial advice. I'm just showing options that are out there. You've got options, you're going to have options as things go along. And that will add to the buy pressure on the PulseX as well once it opens,
The most important thing that I said, and I would say it publicly, privately, I said it to the people I know in real life who are sacrificing for PulseX is, and it sounds bipolar, but I say, in my opinion, these three projects are all home runs. Like buying HEX, Pulse, or PulseX, they are home runs, in my opinion. However, you have to assume that it could also go to zero. So you need to hold those two drastically different outcomes in your head at once, and then make a decision on how much. And in a way, they actually both point to treading lightly, right? Because if you think something is just going to go up massively, you don't actually need to throw in that much to get ludicrously wealthy. A few grand is probably enough.
But do you also point out that, like, keeping your money in an Australian bank, where we currently have bail-in laws and loopholes?
So I mean, the risk stack, stack is different in everything. It's different risk stacks, but
which is more risky, crypto or leaving your money in a bank?
But inflation is a slow bleed, so it's like there's not.
That's a definite slow bleed.
And the one you're talking about bank bail-in, as scary as that is, it's
not that slow bleed.
If that happens, you lose everything.
You
substantial wealth. But I would like to think that there would be riots in the streets if they actually executed that in Australia. But
at this point, I wouldn't be so confident.
Don't do that much.
Riots in the street in Australia.
Riots in the streets.
Let's not go down that path, because that's a rabbit hole that will.
You are right though. It's something people should remember, that legacy is not as safe as people think, and it's not as guaranteed as people think.
In my mind,
you're guaranteed to lose money slowly, is what you get with legacy.
So let's just look in recent history. I believe it was in Cyprus. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They went in and took people's money in their bank account.
A third.
So that's
a savings account. They took a third of it.
So that's in like living history. That was 10, 13. Yeah. That was 13 years ago, right? 12 years ago, maybe.
I think there are other examples within our lifetime as well, and I think they'll only be on the increase.
And that slow bleed to inflation.
That's not
historically
slow.
It was slow. It's not as slow as, I mean, if you're printing 40%, more of the currency, it
doesn't take too many years, and it's worth nothing.
Residential property in Australia is not taken into account in the inflation figures, because if it was, inflation wouldn't be like 1.5% or whatever it is.
20, 50%.
But tangent's right. You've got to. Whenever you tell someone about crypto, especially if they're new, it's got to be, and this is a cliche, but it's so true, whatever money you put in, be prepared that it could evaporate. It could just disappear.
And also, if you leave it in the bank, be prepared that it could evaporate.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying it. No, but I'm not saying it's not. But this could happen
Yes.
you could lose everything in a week in crypto. Like so you've got to make people aware of that. Bluey, come on, man. You can't, that is irresponsible to not say stuff like that.
No,
You've
I
got,
think that's the truth. That's
But
no,
why.
I
let's be
totally
honest
agree
though,
with you.
Bloobum, it's less likely. Like, so what?
Yeah.
Like, what's more likely? The bank doing bail-ins, like in the near future, or the cryptocurrency portfolio getting smashed by 50%. It's got the crypto one going down and getting smashed is definitely, like, based on history, is just more likely to happen.
99%.
It's more likely you're going to get wrecked in crypto.
Yeah, but then you just wait a week and it's
by
up to
holding money in a bank.
100%. But then you
Like
wait a
in
week.
terms of just short-term possibility of you losing everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell everyone I get into crypto, only invest what you can afford to lose.
And maybe just mitigate and just be aware of those risks and mitigate against both. So, like with legacy, take your money out of the bank and buy things that they can't just bail in or something like just you kind of try to rather than going, oh, what's better out of these two, try and mitigate the risks in each scenario. By the way, Bloobum, I think your mic volume is quite low compared to the rest of us.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Just not as loud as everyone else.
Yeah. But don't think I'm disagreeing with you, Blue, because I just went through this exercise, and I think I spoke about it last week on this stream. Went through this exercise where if you've made gains in crypto, where do you put them? And there's nowhere worth putting them, to be honest. Like you say, it's a guaranteed loss if you go chucking it in the bank. So you're better off wearing the volatility of crypto if you're in assets that are good. And I think HEX is now one of those assets where it's been around a long time, hasn't had any bugs or downtime or anything. That's the community behind it that supports it. That's now, dare I say it, a blue chip. Probably needs a few more runs on the board in terms of years, but it doesn't look like it's going anywhere.
Same with me, Bloobum. You know that I agree with you 1,000,000%. Those bail-in laws are disgusting and very scary, and I think it's important we educate people about that sort of stuff. I agree with you with that stuff. Yeah.
How does this volume sound? Is that better?
Yeah, that's good, mate.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about HEX being a blue chip. I agree. I think HEX is the blue chip. And what makes it the blue chip crypto, in my opinion, is the fact that you've got people staking for up to 15 years. And as we know, when you're committed to something in that way for a long period of time, you tend to want to support it. You tend to want to do things to make it, succeed. And that's what we see in the HEX community. We see a bunch of people who are staked long, and they want to do what's best for HEX and best for the community. Now,
and length of time. It's been around for 2 years now. That's ancient in crypto terms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I? Sorry, you go.
I was gonna. No, you go first, and I was
gonna say I want to finish off one point on assets and where you park your money. And my wife looked at me quite in bemusement when I mentioned this, when I said, you know what, buying Rolexes and Lambos and all that isn't as silly as it sounds. In instance,
yes,
yeah. She went, yeah, Jeremy, of course, mate. That's I see where you're going with that. But the reality is, those assets go up. Like, they're rare.
You're gonna get the right ones, not all.
You got to get. Yeah.
I've got a 4-wheel drive that went up in value and an apartment that went down in value. Because of all the madness with the secondhand car markets. No one 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they would have thought, if I had been able to see the future with a crystal ball and said, yo, this SUV I've got is going to go up in value, that apartment I've got in the city is going to go down in value, they would have been like, lock this guy up in a mental asylum. He is just out of control. He's gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole for too long. He's lost his mind. And that turned into a reality. So you've just people need to just
those, like you said, Ep.83, you've got to get the right assets. Obviously, you go buy a Corolla, and it's probably going to go down in value. But you go buy high-end, rare cars.
Yep.
Because there's healthy people that want that shit.
Classic cars and hypercars have actually been an asset class that is invested in by the super wealthy that do retain their value if they are rare enough. Garni Zondas, etc.
What's a hypercar?
no formal definition. Just, I guess, just really expensive, rare cars.
Right. Hard to sell half of those.
But I was just trying to draw the distinction between, like, classic cars are usually super old, and that's why they're rare and expensive, whereas these very expensive, like, hypercars they're brand new, but they are also very rare. Like Paganis, they only make like 5 of them. They're hand built and shit, you know.
Yeah.
So
that's gonna be my next asset class, I think.
Cool, man.
And it is.
I'll come and help you test drive, mate.
I'm going to
fly over. So guys, we were talking about HEX being a blue chip. So what's happening is that we're going to have PulseChain, and then we're going to have HEX on PulseChain. And what PulseChain is going to be, it's a copy of Ethereum. It's going to be proof of stake instead of proof of work. And it's going to be an opportunity for a lot of projects that were not viable on the Ethereum network to be viable on, will be viable on Pulse. But there's also some other factors at play. And I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to let the man talk about it himself. Bloobum has been urging me to have the founder of Hedron on. We've got him in the wings here. His name's Alex. He's the lead dev for Hedron. And he's going to come on and talk to us about it. So just give me a second while I bring him up.
Hey, guys.
Hey, man.
Mate, good to have you on.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good.
How you going?
Good to be here.
Good to have you on, mate. Good to have you on. And thanks for coming on at our time, which I know is not a great time for you.
Oh, yeah, it is about 6 in the morning, but, I'll make it work.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And look, we're Bloobum is, up to his neck in Hedron. He is deep down the rabbit hole. I've been in the chat as well, just learning, trying to understand. Can you, for our audience, can you please give us a rundown of what Hedron is?
Yeah, so the biggest thing to think about with Hedron or Hedron, depends where you live in the world, but we'll say Hedron, is that it's a HEX stake optionality protocol mainly. It's got a little bit of everything. There's some pseudo airdrop tokens for HEX stakers. There's borrowing using HEX stakes as collateral, and there's actually tradable stakes where you can encapsulate a stake and send that to somebody else, or sell it to somebody else on any kind of NFT marketplace.
Mm-hmm. So right. I guess the thing that I'm really interested in is, before we talk about lending and minting of Hedron and things like that, I'd really like to focus more on the transportability of stakes and that side of things, and understand what it is that it brings to the table from that added functionality for HEX.
Yeah, so Hedron's primary method of encapsulating those stakes is something called an HSI. It stands for HEX stake instance. And this is a smart contract. And the easiest way to conceptualize it is think of it like a jar. And you put HEX inside of this jar. And when you do that, the jar is kind of a magic jar, and it's programmed to create a HEX stake inside of itself. So the HEX stake believes this jar is the owner. But through Hedron, you own that jar. So you have complete control of it, just like you would any other HEX stake. But because that jar is part of Hedron, it's able to be remapped to other users. So the stake itself isn't actually moving. It believes that the jar is the owner. It's the owner of that jar that moves around.
Yeah. So this is separate to turning it into an NFT?
Yeah, so that's a separate function where
Correct.
You can
okay.
actually take that jar, and then instead of mapping it to your wallet, you can map it to an NFT token.
Okay. All right. Okay. So before we go down,
can I just jump in here? Would you say that it is in some respects similar to like a Gnosis safe, where you have stakes inside the Gnosis safe, and then with the Gnosis safe, although it's not as simple, you can change over the ownership address of that? Like,
Yeah,
is
I would say it's similar. It's you could think of it kind of like a single signer Gnosis safe.
right. Okay.
Okay, so before we head down minting NFT side of things, let's just focus on, okay, we've got this container which is holding our stake, and it's one stake per container. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So now that we've got that hex in that container, what can we do with it?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a step back here and say that this some of this also applies to stakes you already have that aren't in containers. And the one feature Hedron offers that applies to all stakes is the minting feature. And that allows you to, based upon how many T-shares your stake has and how long you've served within it, you can mint free Hedron tokens. And that applies whether they're in our container or just a regular hex stake.
Is that why you called it a pseudo airdrop rather than an actual airdrop? Is because it's sort of contract based on that?
Correct. You'll actually have to go in and claim it, and it's based upon what stakes you have. Basically, the more T-shares you have and the more time you have served, the more tokens you're going to get through that.
Cool.
So everyone who has a legacy or has a stake in Hex will be able to claim these Hedron tokens, and they'll have to pay the gas to do that function, but they'll be able to claim them or mint them.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this container with our stake in it. We can now transfer that to a new owner. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And maybe if you can just conceptually run through, actually in practice, how does that look? What does that look like to do that?
So you'll actually create the stake through the Hedron application in your web browser, and when you do that, there'll be an approve where you can approve amount of hex to be staked, and other than that, it's fairly standard, similar to go.hex.com. Once you've done that, you can click the tokenize button, and that will turn it into an NFT, and then you can just normal transfer that to another address of your choosing.
Okay, right. So that's what gives it the transportability, is once you convert it into an NFT.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Okay. And then send that to someone else's Ethereum address. They can then demint it. Is that the correct term, or unmint?
We call it detokenize, but there's not really a good term for it other than that. Yeah.
Okay, so they detokenize it, and then they're the owner of that container.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yep. All right. So that's how does this differ to? So Firebun's come out with his wrapped stakes. Is there a difference between the two, or what do you see as the main difference there?
They're pretty significantly different. The staker.app solution is more about having someone with a large amount of hex going in and creating a stake, and then allowing other people to come in and buy small portions of the shares of the stake. And once that's done, those shares are not directly transferable. It's kind of a one-way trip in that regard. I know some people have argued that you could add and remove signers to your staker app wallet and kind of pseudo transfer them that way. But it's really about like a profit and fee sharing system for a staker app, and less about actually being able to have a marketplace to buy and sell stakes themselves.
Yep. Okay. And from what I understand with staker, it's all stakes are within that one, or is that true? Am I saying that correct? So if you have a wallet and you create a bunch of stakes, they're all contained within that one wrap. Is that correct, Day43?
One address. Yeah.
One address. Yeah. So so it'd be a separate address for every stake you wanted to create. Whereas on Hedron, you can have one address that you go and create multiple Hedron stakes with.
We should also probably point out the security benefits in just doing that alone. Like if someone gets hacked, you can go in, tokenize those hex stakes, and send them to another address. So it's an extra level of security.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to get there before they do, but yeah.
Well,
So
the
you're
good thing
going.
is that the hacker can't necessarily see that there's Hedron stakes there unless they look at it on the Hedron through the Hedron front end, because it doesn't come
Right.
up on the
Yeah,
ETC.
if they were not tokenized and you weren't holding any liquid Hedron tokens in your wallet, so nothing to really indicate that there would be a reason to look at that app, there'd be, is from the HEX perspective, from the HEX's contract perspective, all of those HSIs, those jars, are the owners of the stakes, not necessarily your wallet address.
So on Etherscan, you would see a call to the Hedron contract, and that would be the extent of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so, just to clarify for like people who are beginners and listening as well, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to create a stake for the maximum length of time, like the Quattro Cincos. You'll be able to wait on it, and like 5 years or 7 years down the track, you'll be able to sell it, and it'll have a much higher premium because it's attracting a much more interest because it was bought at the much lower share rate.
Okay, so let's, now that we've got, I guess, a basic conceptual understanding of how you're wrapping these and what you can and can't do, let's try and have a look and understand actual Hedron tokens now and the tokenomics behind that. So you've already spoken about the minting side of things. Is there more you wanted to add to that part?
There's a launch bonus that does range from 10x to 1x, and that bonus is applied on top of what your normal mintable payout would be. So it might be easier to conceptualize it as like an 11x to 2x from like whatever you were actually getting. But other than that, I think minting is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, so any existing stakes we have, you go to the Hedron contract, it looks at your existing HEX stake and says you've served X amount of days, therefore you can mint X amount of Hedron tokens.
Yep.
Well, you actually have a choice. You actually have a choice to, and this is because of OG43 going in there and making this suggestion, is you can actually just claim on a stake now. And when you run the claim function, you're just locking in that bonus if you do it in the first 100 days.
Is that right, Alex?
Yeah.
Was that? Did you put that in because I came in and asked that question?
Yep, that is in the GitHub. It is. It was a great idea, and you can go in and claim, and you don't actually have to take the taxable event of getting the tokens.
And that indicates a project that's willing to listen to the community.
Just hang on a minute though, because that you might at launch you might want to mint all of them, because when you do it later on, you are going to get a taxable event.
Yeah, it's going to depend how fast someone goes in and makes a liquidity pool. Really, if you go in and someone starts the pool day one at something ridiculous like $30, that's a big taxable event. Versus if over time, once that settles out, it might make more sense later.
It's also cheaper to only claim it instead of minting it, like marginally cheaper. Okay. And because you need to go in and do it, as I understand it, for every single stake, there's going to be multiple things. Now that leads into a question I have, Alex. Why? I mean, one thing I don't quite understand is, given that gas on ETH is so high, why are you launching on ETH at all? Why not save everyone the gas for claiming and minting and just launch on Pulse?
You get auto mirror though.
Yeah, you do get the copy. So I mean, it will be on both. But
that's a zero sum game, really, because everyone just gets more. So if everyone just gets
no, I mean just everything about it, like the contracts and everything will just automatically be there as soon as Pulse starts, not just the token. That is a benefit.
Yeah,
that is a benefit.
It's but there's also the negative. The negative side is that you're going to need to get like a fair bit of gas to go in. If you've got multiple, if you've got 10 stakes, maybe it's not so bad. If you've got 100 stakes, that could be something that costs a fair bit of might cost you half an ETH, I don't know.
Okay, so Alex, do you? Yeah,
well, hang on, let him answer. Everyone over him before letting him answer.
Okay.
Yeah. So the main reason to launch on ETH is mostly because HEX is still going to be there, regardless of whatever happens in Pulse. There's still hexagons there. still going to be people using it. A lot of us, I assume, will still use it even after Pulse launches. I've got stakes for 15 years. I will certainly continue to use it.
That's an important point. Sorry to interrupt. I want to make it. That's an important point for everyone to understand. You are a hexagon. Like you've got 15-year stakes, and you're a developer, and you've developed something because you love Hex and you want to do something on Hex.
This is his Hex flex, guys. He's paid a lot of money for these audits, and he's made it all. This is the ultimate Hex flex.
Sorry, Alex. Continue, mate. Continue.
But yeah, it's mostly just because Hex is there. It's still going to need some, like it would be unfair to release this on Pulse and say, sorry, all you Ethereum hexagons, you're out of luck. So that's one aspect. Yeah. The other aspect is that there's actually significant gas savings on the end stake using Hedron. Very significant gas savings. And that happens through a really unique interaction with Ethereum where you are disproportionately awarded for destroying a contract and deleting data from chain than you are for having to create it. So when you create these encapsulated stakes in Hedron, they're fairly expensive. They're going to be a couple $100. But when you go to end stake, you're going to get somewhere around a negative 70,000 gas credit because you're destroying the HSI contract and you're deleting all of the storage slots. And I have a little simulation that I run that runs a test net and does all the deployments, and that cut a 1,000 day stake end fee down from $900 to $58.
Cool. So you take a hit up front, but you pick up the savings on the back end.
Yeah.
Which has the advantage of knowing, as in what's happened to people. You'd rather have the upfront cost that you're aware of, and you can make decisions based on the info now and not get slammed later with something that was unexpected.
Yeah, exactly. Like no one wants to see a multi-$1,000 end stake, and then you have 14 days to figure out what you're going to do about it.
But how does the Hex contract in the back end still needs to calculate how much interest you've earned over the life of your stake? How you're avoiding that? Oh, you're saying so when the net result of doing all those calculations for each day and offsetting that by the destruction cost, you end up. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
So we've actually got a something here that I'll just bring up, which is all the gas costs that
This is the latest one. This is the latest one you posted.
Okay. Yeah. So just so you know, immediately you can ignore all of the first four lines where it says references hex.sol. Those are just there because you have to start a new Hex contract to simulate it, and that's expensive.
Yeah. Okay. So where's our minting of our Hedron?
Sure. So if you're minting on a stake you already have, that would be the mint instance, which this is assuming 98 GUI per gas, but that is around $36.
So that's on a legacy stake?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Mint native. Sorry.
Mint native, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're about the same anyway.
Yeah, not too different.
Yep. So and if you do the function that OG just mentioned there, where you're, I can't remember the terminology he used, where you basically just registering that the claim
native. It's 3171. So it'd be 3171 compared to 38. So about the $6 or $7 difference. But I guess we could speak in terms of proportion. So like maybe a sixth of the cost less.
Okay. So the claim native or the mint native, does it matter how long your stake is or how many days it's been running?
No, it's just all it needs to know is what day it was started, and then it's one math problem to figure out how many days have been between the two.
And if you do a claim native, do you then still have to run the mint native and you get double the fees?
Yes. So if you claim, you're just getting the bonus recorded. You're not going to get the tokens.
Yep.
So what would a Hex? What would a start stake be on this?
So if you're doing it wrapped within Hedron, it's going to be that Hex stake start towards the bottom, which is more expensive. at around $400. It's significantly more expensive than starting one within HEX. And I usually tell people, if you're considering doing short stakes within Hedron, it may not be worth it gas wise.
Yeah.
Maybe just do those as regular ones and mint against them, because the rest of the features you're not going to benefit a ton from if you are just making 60, 90-day stakes. But
is anyone else thinking that this, like, that could actually be a legit solution for staking on ETH? Like, just because of the costs of end staking, the longer stakes could just, be really hard to deal with in future and just be beyond. So, it might be an option. It might be an option for people on the Ethereum network. So I guess being on Ethereum would have its upside then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and of course on Pulse, none of this is going to matter anyway. It's going to be pennies regardless.
That is, you're throwing obviously legacy stakes. Not much you could do about them now. It is what it is. But for new stakes, you're throwing ETH users a lifeline, really.
Yeah,
I like that.
Now, do you have a question, Jexxa?
So I guess now I wouldn't mind delving into if we can have a look at how we're going to create this market. Like, great, you can go and mint a bunch of Hedron, but how on the back end with the borrowing, I'm assuming that's how we're creating this market. So it'd be good to understand your thought process on the market for the Hedron.
Sure. So borrowing you can really think of it as more like an advance on what you can mint. In order to mint in Hedron, you have to actually serve those days in your stake. Borrowing doesn't care about that. Borrowing is going to say, hey, I don't care how many you've served. I'm going to give you it all up front for all, like if you're talking about a Quattro Cinco, I'm going to give you all 5,555 days right up front. The condition is that these have to be paid back in 30-day installments.
Okay, so do you get if you've got a 5555, do you get a choice of how many days you want to borrow against, or is it just a whole lot?
So you get the whole lot, but there's a payoff function, so you only pay interest to the current day. So if you want to only use 100 days of that lot, you can do that and then just pay it off on the 100th day, and there won't be any fees for doing that.
Right. So you hold the Hedron in your wallet, and then come the 100th day, bam, one big payout.
Yep.
You've paid it all back.
Yeah, doing it the other way, where you allow people to actually set a date, just ends up costing a lot more gas.
So, I want to try, and I wasn't quite clear on the interest side of it. So let's run through the mechanics of the borrowing, because and I know this is an advanced feature as you've put it, and obviously people, before they use these things, they need to understand how they work. And like I've put out on one of my other videos, read the effing manual so you understand how these things work, so you don't get caught out. So let's go through the process of the borrow and how the interest rate is set. And I don't know if I'm using the right terms here, so if I'm not, please correct me.
Oh, we call them premiums, but you can think of them either way, really.
Yeah.
So you're going to start that borrow process, right? You're going to click the borrow button. It's going to give you all that Hedron up front, and it's going to expect payments to be made every 30 days. Now, the interest rate, or the premium, whichever you want to consider it, it is calculated fractionally from the HEX APY at the time that you're starting it, and it's fixed. So I just know off the top of my head. So let's assume 40% APY. That's going to translate to a 20%, cuts it in half, APR in Hedron. Now, that APR is not applied like you would think of a credit card, where it's revolving against the total balance left. Instead, that APR is applied only against a single monthly payment. So really divide that number by 12. And what you end up with is effectively a 1.66% fixed interest rate for the entire life of the advance, in the scenario where the APY of HEX is 40%.
So that's assuming you've got an average length stake that you've borrowed against. Is that?
It would be the same regardless of length. It would be the same percentage.
So let's just clarify this for people.
Is it 20% per annum? Is it 20% per annum?
No, it will be 1.66 roughly in that case percent fixed for the entire life of the borrow.
So
Per
once
annum.
what happens is you
1.66
take
per
out,
annum.
you
Okay,
take out
I'm feeling a bit dumb here because I've missed the point. So can we just walk back
what
over
you
to
do
it?
is it's pretty simple, Jexxa. You take out
Yep.
the advance on the whole lot, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's the interest that it's charged is going to be 20% for the whole lot over the whole length of time.
Actually,
Whereas
that's
I don't
incorrect.
understand where are you
Oh,
getting
really?
that from though?
Yeah, that's
Explain to
actually
me where the
incorrect.
interest rate comes
Sorry.
from.
Are you talking to me or Blue? Sorry.
Either anyone that can
Okay. So
help me out.
assume 40% APY in HEX, right? Let's assume that. Assume that's what it is.
No, but I get you using that figure for
Yeah.
an example, but where are you getting that from? In real life, when this runs, where are we going to get that figure from?
That number is pulled right from the HEX contract. It's asked
APY differs based on your length of stake.
It's the
Have I got that
global
right?
APY, not your specific stakes APY.
Okay.
So it calculates that based off data that comes right out of the HEX contract. It's done
Yeah.
that, does that once a day. It's part of the daily data update as Hedron updates. So
Okay.
it's going to pull that information and it's going to cut that value in half. That's the first thing it does.
That's just an arbitrary figure that you've decided on. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
So once it's done that, it's going to take, so if you take that APY, right, divide it by 12, that's the monthly interest rate, right? Which
Right.
Okay,
is
gotcha.
1.66%. Now, what a credit card would normally do is charge you that interest rate every single month, compoundingly.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to do that interest rate fixed for the entire thing.
Yep.
So 1.66, like if you borrow, let's say, I'm going to do a calculator just so I can make sure I'm exact on this.
It's like a 20% per annum simple interest.
More like 1.66. Like I'll do the math real quick just so I am exact. Yeah. Okay. So if you borrow 100,000 Hedron and you've paid it all back and you've done it not using the payoff, you've been doing the 30-day payments constantly, your total interest payback is going to be 1,660 Hedron. It will be 1.66%.
That was on 100,000 Hedron. Yep.
100,000. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
For how long is that? Would that be?
It'll be for the life of the stake.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how long it's for. That number doesn't change. Every payment's identical, fixed. It's very predictable. You're going to know exactly what every payment's going to be.
Mm-hmm. So the APY of HEX could change over time.
Mm-hmm.
The global.
Yes.
But this is taken at the point in time of when you take your loan. Is that correct?
Yeah. Once you click that button, that is when it's calculated.
Yeah.
So and that's also why the payoff feature exists, right? Because the APY could go down, and you may say, hey, I can effectively get it's 1.66 now. Maybe I can get a 1.2 now. So you can always use the payoff feature. You're only paying interest to that current day, and then then you can just make a new one, a new borrow.
So you can pay it off earlier if you want to.
Yeah, you can pay in advance as well if you just want to make payments in advance. That just pushes your due date, and we haven't talked about liquidations yet, but it pushes the liquidation and due date down 30 days every time you make a payment in advance. So you could pay 2 years in advance if you like.
Okay. All right. So I think we've started to get an idea of the premiums. So now let's have a chat about the how often you have to pay those premiums and what happens if you don't pay the premiums and things like that.
So the contract's going to expect that to be done every 30 days. All of its math is based around you making one of those every 30 days. If you don't, there's no late fee. There's nothing bad's going to happen to you. But if your total outstanding time, so let's say 3 payments, right, 90 days.
This is a principal and interest payment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's say you go 90 days without making any payments, right? That's the cutoff point for liquidation in the contract. Assuming you haven't paid anything in advance, but getting in a little bit of the weeds there. But regardless, so 90 days, you haven't made any payments. The contract will allow you to be liquidated. That's not an automated thing, but what it is it allows other users of the protocol to see your stake and that it is able to be liquidated, and they can choose if they would like your stake. They could choose to liquidate you. And what that entails is initially they're going to click that button, and whatever your remaining balance is on what you've borrowed, that becomes the start of a auction process. That will be the starting bid.
Sorry, sorry. What was that amount again? Sorry, on the amount you still have owing.
Yeah, it's your remaining balance, whatever you haven't paid back.
Okay. Yeah.
So that becomes a starting bid, and then for a 24-hour period, anyone else can come in and join into this. And at the end of that stake will be liquidated. You, as the borrower, keep whatever you've borrowed. That doesn't get touched, but the stake itself will go to the new owner. You'll lose control of that.
Yep.
And at that point,
effectively,
you would have to bid on your own if you wanted it back. If it went to that liquidation stage within that 24 hours, you would have to bid on it yourself from a different address, or
it could be the same address. It doesn't matter. It's not going to care about that. But I will say, if you're in that if you're past that 90-day period and you're able to be liquidated and no one's done it yet, you can make a payment and push that window back again and disable the liquidation.
So it resets the clock to the 90 days again.
It won't reset it, but it'll just subtract 30 days from whatever.
That's if no one's made a bid on it.
True. Yeah.
What do you think the risks are like with the volatility of the Hedron price? How could that affect how people are able to repay something? I mean, is that like, would you say that's like might affect how people can make repayments?
I think that's something everyone should consider before they're doing this. There's a big warning screen in the app, which is live on Pulse Testnet, by the way. So if anyone wants to play with this, they can. But there's a big warning screen saying, hey, these are things that can happen to you. You should consider these things. And if you're not understanding what this message is saying, you should not do this. There's inherent risks, of course. If the contract or if the price of Hedron goes up against you, it may be difficult to buy it on a market and then repay it, like you said. There's some safe plays there. Sorry.
No, you go. Okay.
There's some safe plays there. Like, let's say you have two stakes. One you're minting against and one you've borrowed against. By having that one you're minting against, you're ensuring a supply of Hedron tokens that you could use to pay back the borrow. And this is actually a strategy I've heard some people talking about in order to utilize their launch bonuses to borrow and then pay back and be liquidity providers in Uniswap while having kind of this pseudo borrowed system where they're recycling stuff. And it gets really complicated when you think of these advanced game theories people are coming up with. But
so can I just let's say you want to do a HSI stake, and then you want to borrow on that, but you also have a ton of like all these legacy stakes. These legacy stakes, if you've done the minting in the launch phase and you've got your 10x or whatever, you're going to have access to this whole lot of Hedron. On that HSI stake, if you borrow, you sort of know on the other side that you're going to have all this Hedron. So,
and that's kind of one of the benefits of the launch phase is that it enables people to have enough liquid Hedron that they can play with the borrowing feature safely and kind of get a feel for it, even while price discovery is happening. I would recommend don't seriously borrow until price discovery is kind of figured out what's going to happen here. But that 10x is a good buffer.
So it would be pretty risky for someone to go in and just like not have any legacy stakes, not have any access to any Hedron, just go in, do a HSI stake, and then just borrow like it out, and then you're gonna have to then you're gonna have to come up with that extra percentage to repay, and then at some point, I mean, like you're going to have to buy more on the market. And if the price moves against you, you could find yourself in a difficult position, perhaps liquidated. But if you have legacy stakes where you've just got all this Hedron accumulating over time anyway, that could be your way of paying for that borrowed thing, worst case scenario.
And I'll give you a really interesting story I heard the other day. Someone came into the Hedron chat. They were telling me about how they had made a bunch of hex stakes early on, like they were day one hexagon, and had quite a bit of value accrue. And then they got diagnosed with cancer, and they were in a position where they had to emergency end stake everything. They had to liquidate everything they had, and and they wished Hedron existed, because they could have possibly minted some liquidity. They could have possibly borrowed. There's a lot of things they might have been able to do to prevent having to emergency end stake. And as hexagons, we kind of have this culture mentality where when we see people end stake, it kind of irks us, right? When they're emergency end staking, you're like, that guy's an idiot. But people emergency end stake for a lot of times for reasons that are entirely valid. And if there was a way they could not emergency end stake, if there was a way they could not dump the hex price when these things happened, I think that would be incredibly valuable.
This is sort of fundamentally changing the way that people can interact with hex, though. I mean, it's I guess it wasn't in the original vision, but I guess from that perspective, I guess encapsulated stakes didn't exist when hex came out as well. So
yeah, sorry, you go, Matt.
I was just gonna say, I don't think this will eliminate emergency end stake entirely. I think there will still be people who do it. That's going to be a thing that exists forever. But if you can isolate some of that and reduce it, it's better for the hex price overall, because anyone who emergency end stakes is a guaranteed dumper. Like, that's the only reason you emergency end stake, is to immediately dump right after.
Yeah.
Can I just also point out, before Jexxa
goes,
that if you do borrow or advance and then you pay it off, you can then go and mint all of the Hedron that you accumulated over all of those days. So that's why it's very different from a loan in a lot of ways.
Hang on, run that by me again.
So let's say you got your HSI, you borrow the full Hedron that you would mint from it, and you pay it back over time, and then at the end you've paid it all back. You can actually then go and mint all of those days, the Hedron from all of those days. So essentially,
because you've served the time, served the time by them, so then they're basically owed to you anyway.
Yeah. So you paid a bit of interest, but basically that's why people are considering an advance rather than a loan in a lot of ways. Do you understand?
So you pay it all back. Well, even regardless, let's just say you don't even borrow. So you run out of stake for 15 years, and then just before you end stake it, you mint all your Hedron. You still get to keep your, or do you? What happens to your stake then if you end your stake?
You get your hex.
So, sorry, I missed kind of what you said there at the end.
Okay, so you've got a 15-year stake. Gets to and I'm assuming you've got to mint your Hedron before the stake ends.
Yes.
So you end your stake. You mint all your Hedron, then you end your stake. So that hex that you then mint is coming back to your wallet, I'm assuming.
Yeah, goes straight to your wallet.
So although it's in a container, okay, the hex comes back to your wallet.
It uses the transfer from function of the ERC20 to move it out of the container directly into your wallet.
Okay, so you end up with the hex, and you end up with Hedron. Okay, what I'm struggling to sort of reconcile at the moment is I'm trying to find, okay, well, how do we find a price on this, and how does the market see the value in this? Because you've got all these legacy stakes minting a bunch of Hedron now, so that's supply coming to market. You've got a bunch of people that are potentially lending Hedron in advance, or waiting till they get to the end of their stakes and minting a whole bunch more of this token. I'm trying to find whether
What's the
you've done any.
disincentive for people to sell down, like these legacy claimers, to sell down the price? What's the disincentive for that?
Yeah.
Is that sort of what you're?
Well,
what
yeah, I guess I'm trying to find where the market is, and is there any linkage between the price of a T share, or like is there some way we can value these things?
Yeah, so there's two big pieces to this puzzle. The first is the way that Hedron inflates, and it's, like you said, it's using that your B share amount multiplied by the amount of days served. So the way you could kind of equivalate how that's going to, and if in a perfect world everything was valued at whatever its base asset was, you would just take the price of one B share, which is around $5 right now, and you divide that by the average stake length. It's
So
about
B share price divided by average stake length.
Yeah, so and that's in days. So like it's roughly 6 years now, I think. So
yeah,
looking at like divided by 2190, and that should be, I guess, probably around 0.002, something in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's perfect world valuation if it maintains that. So as the T share price increases, or just the share price, this is going to exponentially decrease the amount that can actually be minted over time from new stakes. So it's not all too different from like Bitcoin or Ethereum mining in the way, except instead of a difficulty, you have the share price increasing over time. But the effect is more or less the same. And then on the other side of that, sorry.
So as the share price in HEX goes up, you can mint less Hedron. Is that right?
New stakes will have less shares, and they'll be able to mint less. Over time. So and then on the other side of that, you have a deflationary system where these liquidation auctions are going to happen. There's the borrowing premiums that are going to be paid. All of that is burnt by the contract. Just vanishes from the market supply. So you have deflation on that side, and what you get with this is the amount of Hedron someone's willing to bid in a liquidation is going to depend on the value of the shares of the stake that's being auctioned off. So you're going to end up with this system where both the inflation and the deflation are both trying to bring the actual value of the token closer to that of the share price.
Yep. So, okay, so everyone's got a bunch of legacy stakes. They go mint all this Hedron now. As soon as the contract launches, they can mint a bunch of it, get 10x bonuses. They've got all this Hedron sitting in their wallet.
There's one other reason that they wouldn't mint, and that's, do you want to explain is it AMR bonus?
Yeah. I can do that in a second if you were going to say something, Jexxa.
Yeah. So you mint a heap of Hedron and it's just kicking around in your wallet. Then have you thought of anything you can do with that? Is there any other mechanic, staking or whatever? There's something you can do with it?
So there's actually two incentives not to mint in the first place. The first one is probably the most direct and the one that I see the most people trying to kind of game theorize what they're going to do about it, and that's the AMR bonus. And this is a fixer bonus that exists for one very specific case, and that is should the borrowed supply of Hedron exceed the total supply by more than 50%, it's going to start throwing bonuses out to minters to incentivize them to mint more Hedron. Because if you get too close above that number, if you get too far above it, you run into a situation where everyone's borrowing and they can't buy it back to pay back their loans, and everyone gets liquidated.
Yep.
So
what's AMR stand for?
The advance to mint ratio.
Okay.
So that bonus compounds with the launch bonus. So they multiply together. So if someone's getting in day one and they get the launch bonus and they just claim, by not minting, they're making AMR potentially happen faster because there's less minted supply.
Yep.
So as time goes on, they're just increasing the likelihood that it may eventually happen. And if it does happen, they'll have their 10x bonus, and it will compound with whatever AMR is. And some people are planning, I know Bree on Twitter has a big Excel spreadsheet
Sure, she does.
Yeah. It's really fun to look at. But yeah, just thinking of all the different solutions. But so there's that. There's also the idea that if you're making these instant stakes, right? Like one thing you want when you're going to sell a stake, you obviously want as much money. Like if you're going to list this on Rarible or OpenSea, you're going to demand as much money as you can possibly get for it. You know, it has a lot of good features. It has potentially a multi-year-old T-share rate that you can't get anymore. And additionally, the minting state of Hedron is going to go with it. So if you've not minted anything on that HSI stake, so say it's gone for 5 years, there's 5 years of mintable Hedron there that you're moving with the stake. You're saying, hey, not only are you buying the stake, you're buying these 5 years of Hedron that's attached to it that I haven't minted yet. And if you have a launch bonus on it, then they're getting that too. So there's a lot of reasons to not mint the 10x. There's a lot of ways you can use those early bonuses to your advantage later on.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm trying to reconcile. So you've got a value of your HEX stake, which coming in 15 years could be huge.
Yeah.
And then you've also got this value of Hedron, and this is going to sound stupid in crypto, but you've just basically printed this free money. I'm just I know that sounds very dumb from saying that when you're in the crypto world, because it happens all the time. I'm just wondering whether that has any impact on the value of.
Well, if I were to tell you you were going to get this token for free, and you've essentially already paid for it. You bought T-shares with your HEX when you made your stake, and these tokens they're a proxy for those T-shares that you can trade around. Would you not intrinsically associate value to that? You paid for it technically. Like there's.
Look, I'm surprised what people intrinsically add value to in crypto.
But
I know what you're saying. I'm just trying to reconcile it. Whether that for me, it's about the market and how do you capture that value and how do you keep that value in there.
Mm-hmm. But Jexxa, you know what's interesting? Like I don't know if you heard Richard Hart on Twitter Spaces when he was on it. And one of the things he was talking about was how things that inflate inflate heaps at the start end up pumping like fuck because people buy the cheap ass tokens. Like people are going to be dumping this. There's going to be hexicans who mint it and dump it, no doubt. And the price is probably going to start very, very, very low. But then over time, as those people get shaken out, and you have speculators and you have people, and also remember that anything that has been borrowed, any of those installments is getting burnt. Anytime it goes to auction and it's a liquidated borrow is bought out, that gets burnt. So there's that burning deflationary pressure.
Yeah, no, I get that. I do see that. And without the borrowing thing, I would say that the market wouldn't exist. So I do get that. I think that's clever.
Well, and also at a point, how many people are holding off on HEX because they feel like they've already missed the train? There's definitely a lot of them. I have personal friends who said, I wish I would have bought when you got in during the adoption amplifier. I was like, yeah, but I think this is going to, I can tell them any number. I can tell them $10, $20, whatever. They don't, they look at the chart and think, oh, well, 0.0006 to 30 cents, that's not that big of a change, even though it is, and they don't see the $10 being realistic, so they hold off. Versus here, you have this opportunity where if you're looking at this on launch, where there's going to be literally billions of this stuff minted or not, depending on what you want to do, and you can buy HEX stakes with it if liquidations occur.
Well, I think the thing that. Sorry, you go, Day43.
I was going to ask, do you have an idea or projected numbers for how many Hedron will exist once it launches?
It's going to be purely dependent on how many people choose to mint and how many people know about the project. And the Telegram.
Let's just say minted or claimed. Let's just lump them all into one. Either do you have any prediction?
My personal guess, just based off of what I see reception wise, social media wise, and Telegram size. I'm kind of in this camp of around 5% or less of total stakes will participate in the launch bonus phase. And so that's going to put what total supply somewhere in. I am just rough numbering this, but
It's so hard to say.
maybe 30 trillion, maybe. Like, it's really going to depend on who is coming in here and making these stakes.
So
Well,
you know what's
just on that.
Mm.
Sorry, Jexxa, I keep cutting you off, mate.
I'm taking a fair bit of the mic time here. So
I just wanted to ask, like, when you just said like people, it depends who's coming in and making these stakes. Do you have like a plan for or an idea of how you're going to attract new like people into into Hedron, like people who perhaps aren't in HEX already, like just new people? Because at the end of the day, that is what if something's built on top of HEX, then ideally you need that to be bringing in more people for it to really, in my opinion, have a real value to the community, to the HEX community at least. You need just like for example, you've got the Staker app. I'm using this as an example. That is bringing in people because that's like, there's an easy thing for them to use. They get it on their phone. It's bringing in new people who may not, interact with HEX. Is there a plan for how Hedron can do this sort of thing as well, or is that something that you'll be considering?
So I'll say in the Staker app thing, I'm in talks with them about it. I don't think they're necessarily opposed to implementing Hedron. I think they want to see an audit, but that's something I'm discussing, and hopefully we'll have a answer on that part of it soon. But the other side of that, imagine a world where you go to OpenSea and there is just a sea of HEX logos for millions of dollars. Like that's the top. That's what everything's moving on OpenSea and on Rarible is that.
So the NFT crowd is potentially a target market or target audience for this. Okay.
Yeah, like
just out of interest.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, everyone loves a good JPEG. If you mint a HEX NFT that's a JPEG with real financial value in it, so it's got some graphical thing that people can latch onto, is that doable? Can you?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't understand how all that crap works.
We haven't really figured out like what the image is going to be, right? It's like just.
But what if it's individual to each stake?
So you run a couple of risks. Like one is that maybe people value the picture more than they value the stake, so it kind of breaks the idea of the market a little. So that's a concern to think about. I've had interesting ideas thrown at me. Like someone said, well, why don't we just make CryptoPunks of Richard Hart? And it's Richard Hart all over these NFT marketplaces. And I'm like, that's a fantastic idea. I don't know if he'll like it. He doesn't tend to like NFT art very much.
I think he would take it as a bit of a tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, it would be pretty humorous. I'd agree. But regardless of what it is, I think it's a marketing opportunity for both Hedron and HEX that could be gigantic.
Yeah.
To have HEX logos all over these NFT platforms would not be a bad thing for HEX.
Yeah, and they'd have real value. It's not just a JPEG.
Yeah.
A lot of people are asking in the chat about audits. Do you want to give us an update on that process?
Yeah, so CertiK is doing the audit. They've completed the preliminary audit and proceeded to misunderstand most of the contract. So I had to sit with them for a while and say, no, this is how this works. This is if anyone's seen Richard Hart's stream a few weeks ago, I think, about the audit process for HEX, it's gone very similarly for Hedron, but we're piecing that together. They keep telling their ETA right now is like end of next week. Whether that happens or not, it's really their call. But Hedron won't launch before that comes back.
So you're basically paying them to explain your code to them so they can understand it. Is that what's going down?
More or less. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Sounds like my discussions with my accountant about HEX.
Yeah.
Just want to, before we go too far down the audits and all that sort of stuff, while we're still just on costs and things, something I just thought about, a price floor initially could be, I don't know how this would work, but everyone's got to pay a fee to mint these coins. So they're not going to sell them for any less than the mint cost, you wouldn't think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I certainly would not think.
So
I worked it out at about 0.00000, I think 28. I think there was 4 zeros and a 28.
Now, obviously, it would depend on the amount of days you've been able to mint
But
and everything.
Minting actually has a time. That's the thing about the supply as well. It has a time function because as the days go on, more Hedron can be minted.
Yeah, so if you would have to take the worst case, so the longest running stake and the fee to mint. Oh man, that gets complicated.
I just did it basically as look, because I had two stakes that I had due to end. So instead, I ran the good accounting function, and I just went, and in order to see how much, whether that would be worth it or not, I kind of just went and like saw how much Hedron I'd get for that, how much it cost me extra to do that, and came up with the price.
Yeah, which works for that individual stake, but will obviously be a variable thing for every other stake, depending on how many T shares. Yeah,
and that's with the bonus. That's minting in the first 10 days with the 10x bonus.
Yeah. So sorry, you go.
No, go. No, finish it.
So the other thing I was thinking about, which I hadn't considered before, and that AMR feature that you mentioned. So combine that with what Day43 had suggested as an implementation where you can just claim it but not mint. So did those two things come about at the same time, or was the AMR thing always in the background?
The AMR's always existed. The claim was a more recent idea.
Because I think without having the claim, that feature is half as powerful as what it would have been.
Yeah.
So by having that claim feature, that means people can genuinely claim it and keep it off the market, so it doesn't exist until that AMR kicks in, and then they start to mint.
Mango Junkie came up with a hashtag. What is it?
Oh, I saw it earlier, but I don't have my Telegram up.
Hashtag never mint or something.
Yeah, hashtag never mint.
Never mint. Yeah, never minting. Wonder where he got that from.
Hey, good. Alex, was given that like a lot of hexagons have like many like stakes, was there no way to like just run a function that could just go through all of the stakes in one address rather than having to do them individually? Was there just...
Yeah, so the problem you have with that is one of gas, and that is you're going to end up having to pull their list of stakes and loop through it multiple times to figure out all of the stats, and you run into this nested loop that can, like, if you have more than about 150 stakes, which some people do. I realize it's probably not the most common thing ever, but there are people that have them. You'll exceed the gas limit. It will cost you multiple thousands of dollars to do, versus if you do them individually, you're looking at $30 a pop. It's very straightforward. So it's really one of those things where it's just not worth it. You know, that we had that code and it was scrapped.
Yeah, at least that way you can cherry pick which stakes you wish to do it on as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I think that was the 2 points I wanted to cover on the price thing. So now if we go back to you were talking about audits. So in terms of risks, at the moment, financially, the only risk really is gas cost to get involved in the launch. What about contract risk, where the act of minting or claiming has an impact on your current HEX stake?
There's no approval required. It doesn't. Everything it needs to do a mint is publicly accessible by HEX. So you are going to pay for the transaction to tell it to mint, but it's basically just going to say, hey, there's this guy here. It's, envision a conversation between Hedron and HEX. And Hedron comes to HEX and says, hey, this guy here says he's got these stakes. Can you prove it? HEX proves it. And then Hedron just hands him a bag of tokens. There's no.
Is that like a read? Is that like a read from the contract?
Yeah, it's just read only as far as your stakes are concerned.
Which particular read is it? Like, is there
stake ID or?
It's going to pull the stake count and then iterate through your stake lists based on whatever that count number is.
Yep.
Stake count and stake list, those two. That's sort of what you have to do anyway. If you want to do a good accounting, you have to sort of know that information from those two as well. Yeah. Gotcha. Let's.
So Stephen's just put a question in chat, which I think we sort of covered, but let's cover it anyway. So I'll let you answer that one, Alex, if you don't mind.
So when you mint day one, you're going to get those tokens when you click the mint button. And there's two reasons not to do that. One might be taxable events. If some guy takes his Hedron, he goes and creates the Uniswap liquidity pool, and he sets the price to $3,000 or something ridiculous. From a taxable event standpoint, you minted when Hedron was $3,000 per token, and you minted billions of those tokens, potentially. So that's one reason not to, is to wait for the price to settle and figure out what it's going to do before you do it. The other aspect of that is if you want to wait for that AMR bonus to trigger, if it ever does, not minting and just kind of waiting and seeing what happens is more advantageous to you that way, because you can always mint later. There's no, you don't lose anything by waiting. You only gain.
Can I just say, how greedy do you have to be? If you get that 10x bonus, how greedy do you have to be just hanging out for another 3x on top of that?
Years.
There's people doing it.
Just be happy with the 10x, damn it! Like, come on.
So, sorry, I'm not sure if we went right into the AMR side of things. Can you explain? Does that scale in or?
Yeah. So the simplest way of thinking it is so it starts at 51%. So if the total borrowed supply is at 51% compared to the total supply, for every 1% over 50%, you're in this 0.2x. So 51% is 0.2x. 52%.
So if the borrowed supply is greater than the total supply,
not greater, it's more than 50% of the total supply.
Okay, right. Sorry, say that again for me, mate, because I was.
Yeah, so for every 1% over 50%, so 51, for example, it's 0.2x. So 51% is going to be 0.2, 52% is going to be 0.4, and that bonus exists for the entire 24-hour period. It's called a Hedron day, but it's the same thing as a HEX day. They reset at the same time.
Have I got that right? A 20% bonus? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
Is that a 20% bonus? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
For every 1%, a 20% bonus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that date set of when that's going to be?
When AMR is triggered?
Like when that day is?
So you can watch the ratio. Like if you see the day before, it's at 50.96% and it's about to hit 51%. You can just kind of be watching that on the Hedron app. But once that happens and then a day refresh occurs, it will be that following day for the entire day.
Okay, maybe I misheard something. I thought you guys said there was like a special day that you had to do something.
No, it just ensures that the bonus lasts for a whole day so that everyone can access it.
For the day, not. Yeah.
Sorry, and I might have just switched off then. So you said 1% gives you a 20% bonus, and how many percent will that allow it to go up, or is it?
It'll go from 0.2x to a max of 10x.
10x. Okay.
So that's at 50% times 0.2.
Yeah. So if 100% of all the supply was borrowed, which is unrealistic,
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible. But if
Yeah.
that was a thing, that would be a 10x AMR bonus.
Yep. Okay.
Which would be 100x if you had the 10x.
Yeah.
It might actually be more than 100x. But unrealistic, right? Unrealistic.
Yeah. It's something that that is most likely impossible.
Yep. Is there anything we should have asked that we haven't?
I think, a lot of this is complicated, right? A lot of people listening to this are going to, I see it every day in the Hedron Telegram. People come in, they don't fully understand, it doesn't get them, takes them 2 or 3 days to really digest it all and paint a picture in their minds. But if you wanted to simplify it down to like the core value of what Hedron's trying to do, it is to reduce hex dumping and increase buy pressure for hex. That's really the only two major purposes. If people are borrowing instead of end staking, if people are selling stakes themselves instead of end staking, you have less sell pressure. You have less people dumping the price. And additionally, if you want to be able to play these kind of games in Hedron, if you want to experiment with this game theory, you have to have hex stakes. If you have hex, great, you can stake it. If you don't have hex, you're going to have to go buy it and stake it.
So the people who who potentially benefit the most from Hedron are legacy hex stakers. They are the people who are going to get all the free claims. And when I say free claims, you do have to pay the gas, but none of that is going to Hedron address or anything. That's just Ethereum costs. But then you'll get Hedron for whatever you've served of that stake so far, and there's a calculation that works that out. And as far as I can understand, contract risk aside, assuming an audit, all goes well, the only risk that I see is liquidation if you are unable to pay back the advance that you've taken, like pay back the repayments of the advance. And if in that instance, your stake, which you've got an advance on, could get taken away from you, and you might not have that stake, but you'd have the Hedron that you got an advance on.
Yeah, and I think if liquidations are something that scares you, you should probably not click the borrow button. It's not a requirement. It is an optional thing that you do not have to do.
Yeah.
And
but
I
you
think
still get all the functionality of being able to turn it into an NFT and then sell it. So there's all these other things that
that's
come
the
along
other
with it.
It value adds onto Hex just by all the options that it adds onto them, like being able to turn into an NFT
gift
and
stakes
sell it.
and
Gift stakes and print all this Hedron, mint all this Hedron from it as well. Like not only you buy a Hex stake for the maximum length of time, the best share rate, but then you get to mint as you go as well.
I've got a...
Sorry, I just wanted to say one quick thing. I see a lot in the Hex staking chart where you have whales, and whales are staking forever because they have so much capital they don't know what to do with. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they stake 15 years, 10 years. They have the ability to do it, and they have the liquidity to do it. People getting into Hex new are also staking forever because they want to be whales. They want to make up for the time they've lost. You're seeing a lot of people in the middle not do that. You're seeing a ton of people whose stake length's becoming shorter and shorter, and they're holding more and more liquid. And a lot of that is because these are normal people who have now come into millions of dollars of wealth. And now there is a risk to the time. They don't know what the price is going to do. We can all say up and to the right, and I think, most likely up and to the right forever in most regards. But some people are planning against the risk of time. So by having this protocol really give you more options with what you can do liquidity wise and how you can handle the entire life of the stakes. 15 years is a long time. Hex has only been around for 2 years, and it feels like it's been forever, honestly. But it's great. It's been great also. But being able to manage it more appropriately is going to be really powerful for a lot of people and encouraging a lot more stakes.
I totally agree. I see this as giving people more options. I think what we're seeing a lot at the moment is, you're correct, there's a lot more shorter rolling, larger stakes. I think that's probably people have been waiting on PulseChain for many, many months now, and probably hedging their bets on how they're going to do different things on different sides of on each chain. So I think that's probably exacerbated that as well.
I've also had a funny story of people coming and telling me that they don't stake long in HEX because they've made so much money now they're bored, because staking bores them because they can't do anything with it. And it's funny to think about, but on one hand, it's true. If you've made enough in HEX, maybe you're just looking for more fun things, and maybe Hedron will bring that to you.
So on the NFT, like if you were to go sell an NFT, what fees or costs would be involved in that?
So when you're selling an NFT, kind of depends how you're doing it. I think there's room for NFT marketplaces to get better in this regard. They're all really structured around the idea of selling JPEGs. But
what cut are they taking? Like, are they going to take a cut of that? Or
so the marketplace is going to take, most of them take 2.5%. Rarible sometimes takes 5%, depending on what they're doing. And I think there's a huge market for someone to come into NFTs and change this. And it may be something we look at to do in the future as well.
2.5% is actually a lot, for a digital, something that's set up and basically rent seekers. I think there would definitely be, because we're not talking insignificant amounts of money when you're talking about, longer HEX stakes. It could be, thousands, hundreds of thousands. A stake could be millions. It wouldn't be an insignificant amount of money.
Rarible is open source. Someone could fork it and change all of the percentages of cuts it takes. And we're going to launch with a UI fork for Rarible, but still using the Rarible DEX backend to do all the work. But it's definitely something we're looking at, of maybe creating some kind of Rarible fork that has hopefully no fees, like just whatever's required to do the job.
Yeah.
But no expectation of profits from the work of others. That may or may not happen.
That's fair enough. You've got to throw that in there, man. Got to throw that in there, absolutely. Do you guys have any more questions?
Let's throw it out to chat. Does chat have anything that they think we haven't covered, or?
So, for anything that we've covered or things that we haven't covered, is there any element of this that is not completely trustless?
No, the entire contract has no admin keys. It is immutable. All the same design principles of HEX. It's going to launch, and it's never going to change, and there's no one who's going to be able to change it.
That's the most important thing to me. Thanks.
We've done a really comprehensive overview of it. Do you want to talk about the SA address at all?
Sure. So I don't know who's going to own that address or what their intentions are, but essentially Hedron does have an OA-like address called the source address, and it receives a copy of bonuses. So launch bonus, AMR, any of that occurs, there will be a copy of that sent to that address.
So launch bonuses. So any of the 10x bonuses.
Yes.
How much of that goes to the SA?
It'll
get a duplicate.
Yeah. So it'll roughly equivalent to like 48-ish% of the supply if every single person participated, but the number should stay relatively.
Sorry, to 48%.
Yeah. Now what that address chooses to do is unknown at this point in time. I can think of some interesting things. So there's a burn function not used in the UI that might be usable by the SA. Guess we'll find out.
So that gets the launch bonuses. What other bonuses did you say?
The AMR. The only two bonuses.
AMR.
Now, it doesn't get the AMR in all cases. It only gets it if you're also getting it. But like, for example, if you emergency end stake and it's running through the the cleanup phase and it says, oh, there's an AMR here, it's not going to give that to the SA because you've emergency unstaked. You're not getting it, so the SA also does not get it.
That address, that SA address, is it SA? SA?
Yeah, that's fair.
That address has a high, like, I know there's no expectations, but that's got a high bar to live up to, because like hexagons are going to like be comparing that to the OA, and the OA, we don't know whose address, who does or who does anything with that, but we do know that the OA, if we look at how it's behaved over the course of the last 2 years, it's done everything in the best interests of HEX. It's never sold on the market. It's never done anything. So there is like a high bar for the SA, I guess, to live up to when you're in the eyes of hexagons, at least.
Yeah, if you want to get into some real theoretical stuff, the OA in HEX has enough collective HEX power that if it wanted to force the SA to be benevolent, let's say, and just outclass it, it could wait till day 101, so after the launch phase is open, stake for 1 day, and collectively have enough shares to mint more Hedron than the entire system. It could have like literally 90 to 95% of the entire supply if it wanted to.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting.
So why put an SA in there if it has that vulnerability, not vulnerability, but that mechanic?
Well, otherwise you would have to ban the OA, the HEX OA, from participating, right? It doesn't seem entirely fair to ban the OA from participating. It hasn't done anything wrong. There's no reason for it to not be able to participate. But there may be things that the SA would have the power to do that only an address with a large amount of Hedron could do.
I can think of a way how you could pitch it as to why it should be removed, is to remove the FUD of centralized control, like potential centralized control. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying, like, that would be a reasonable comment that I would not think is unreasonable. But I'm happy with how it is.
Yeah, I think the way it is fine. I think there needs to be, it's as Richard Hart says himself. The best time to buy anything is when the creator, or we'll say the unknown person entity in this case, when Satoshi owned all the supply, it was the best time to buy Bitcoin. When the OA owned all of HEX, it's the best time to buy HEX. When the SA owns all of Hedron, it's the best time to own Hedron.
I think we've had a really good delve into Hedron today. We've asked a lot of questions. We've sort of hit it from many angles. The one thing that really has stuck out to me, which I wasn't expecting, was this idea that on Ethereum there's potentially, and of course this is assuming all the audits are passed and everything, all of that is above board. That's always, that caveat is there always. But there's potentially this lifeline for the Ethereum side, where HEX stakers, if they stake through Hedron, they could potentially reduce the end stake costs because of those end stake deductions, SLO deductions that you were talking about.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting things, for sure. I think a lot of people will appreciate that. What that saving is going to be really dependent on your stake and how long it's for and all those things. I can only do so much in a simulator, but watching it turn a $900 end stake fee for a 1,000-day stake into a $58 fee was really exciting to watch.
Did you push any of those them out further to see what that could be? Was there a tipping point where it became?
So you actually can't in simulations, because the problem HEX has as a contract, if you deploy that into a simulation, something running that testnet and interacting with stuff, you're only one person, and HEX has to calculate daily data for every day. So if you just skip 5,000 days, and then end stake, well, you break the gas limit, because not only is it end staking, it's also going back and recalculating interest for all the 5,000 days that there have been no transactions happening. So in order to really push that, you need to test against real data on mainnet. So, and there's a good chance it's even cheaper on mainnet because there's less work that has to be done per end stake, as long as more people are using the contract.
Can you theorize how, like, can you theorize just in your mind what might happen further out? Like, could there be a point where, you know, that benefit is no longer there, like on the ETH side?
I mean, yeah, the ETH side could choose, hey, these guys are exploiting this thing with contract destruction, and we're going to reduce the gift that we give on that. You know, just like they did with S-Load, right? Hex was really cheap to use at first, and then S-Load 4Xs and among other things, and now we're looking at $1,000 to end our stakes. So
Yeah.
anything can happen on that side, but as it sits now, it is a benefit.
What they do on ETH, we can't control. You know, there's no way to control that yet, and that's the same for all the contracts on ETH.
Yeah.
Well, mate, I think we've covered. I think we've covered as much as we can cover. You know, is there anything that you want to throw out there or add to what we've talked about today?
Yeah, if you've got questions, you know, come to the Telegram, t.me/Hedron Crypto. Follow on Twitter, at Hedron Crypto. We've got wonderful hexagons, thousands of them at this point. Drop something. Anyways, I think almost 1,200 people on Telegram right now. Yeah, and so many of them have learned so much and just taken the initiative to help others understand the system, and lots of great things happening. So
yeah, some interesting voice chats. I've jumped into the voice chat a couple of times and listened to a few of the fellas talking. Jack is one of them, who's quite a knowledgeable gent. And
I don't think Jack sleeps.
Yeah. Every time he's always been there. Almost every single time I've you know, jumped in. But and then there's another guy. There's another guy. Who's the other guy who's in there quite?
Yeah, probably Nomad. Those are the two that have been around since, I'd say, 20 members or so, and they've taken a lot of time to understand the system, and they're excited about it, and they sit in there all day trying to help people like understand everything.
I think you need to just if I can add one thing, I think you should rename that claim function the 43OG claim function. I think that should be the official name in the contract.
I'll see what I can do.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I'd like to thank Alex for coming on and giving us this comprehensive overview of Hedron. A lot of people have been asking about it. We've sort of covered it here and there over the last couple of weeks, and it's good to have you on just to, you know, lay it out there for us. Thanks, Jexxa. Thanks, Bloobum. Thanks, Tangent. Is there anything you guys want to say before we finish?
You haven't done bitch tits.
Oh, bitch tits! We haven't done bitch tits of the week. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, let's do that.
So, Alex, if you don't mind hanging around for a minute, mate.
Oh yeah, I'll hang around.
We have a segment called bitch tits of the week, and it goes to the person who predicts what the hex price will be. So we do predictions every week, and then the next week we work out who the bitch tits of the week is.
If you guys can just chat for a minute while I just get some data.
Yeah, there was one thing I actually wanted to mention that I think is pretty freaking massive. It's not project specific; it's crypto in general. And but if we're running out of time, I can talk about it on my own channel. But if there's time,
we got heaps of time, mate.
Yeah, I got a bit of time.
So the very first ILO, which is like they're calling it a legal offering, is initial legal offering. So it's like ICO, like IDO, like IEO. This is just a different type of coin offering, where the idea behind it is to fund a legal action that is ethically sound or not, like as in it's, I guess it could be anything, but the idea is initially it's going to be things. So the example that of the first one, it's a marijuana farm that got discriminated against and shut down. And so the idea is that everyone contributes to the legal fund for that particular legal battle, but then you are rewarded if there's damages paid. You get rewarded according to your share in that pool. So you could support legal battles just purely for ethical reasons where you don't care whether there's a return or not, or you could support legal battles where there is likely to be a return or some kind of combination of the two. And it made me think about the legal battle that's ongoing with CoinMarketCap and Johnny Chaos and others that are involved in that theoretically could have been an ILO where hexagons contributed to. I mean, I'm sure there were hexagons that contributed to that legal battle, but it allows for there to be more fight focused on what I believe that within crypto there is there's a lot of overlap in sort of the ethical views of people within crypto, right? Like it's not exact. My opinions don't match perfectly with even Richard's, but there's a, we all agree that the Hex community wants the world to be a better place, wants, better things for humans, etc. And that if we have a situation where now this can be actually funded in a way where it's not just a gift, there's potential for actual financial return, an ROI involved, then I think this could be massive moving forward.
Also,
Absolutely.
just about how to pulse.com, who are running these Twitter storms, just as a way for all of us to leverage our collective power. Like, check out how to pulse.com, and every Thursday we're going to do one. They're going to do one, and comment, retweet, and stuff like that. And they're picking different people out. I think they're looking for people to Twitter storm as well.
Guys, if you want to see Tangent on his channel, you can go to his YouTube channel, which is hex_tangent. That's his YouTube channel there. You can see him do his streams, which you do like multiple times a week, don't you, mate?
Thanks for that. Look, over the festive period, my streaming rate has been 0. But yes, that normally within normal times of the year, it's sort of like at least 2 or 3 streams a week. No schedule though. The only things that I do that are scheduled are this stream here with Discourse Syndicate and every second week the Steak and Bake stream. But that got interrupted a little bit because of various different things that have been on. Like I think there was a conflict with the Hex conference and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So even that is variable. And my channel is just no schedule.
And if anyone wants to go into the Hedron Telegram and find out a bit more info, you can speak to Alex and the guys in there. It's t.me/Hedron crypto. Make sure you go to the right one. Don't go to a scam one. Do all the right things, guys. Don't get scammed.
I think that's how you know you're a successful project, is when people are scamming your Telegram links.
You might just want to repaste that form link for the guess as well, day 43, because it might have got lost with all the other Telegram and Hedron stuff that you're putting in there.
Yeah.
So if you want to get your votes in for next week, peeps, you can use that form link that day 43 has just popped in there. But for this week, bitch ticks of the week is Dawsey78.
Oh man, again.
I think he's won it twice now. Is that right?
Jeez.
So he was the closest, and then we had Sammy Chicka wasn't far behind, so I think she takes the panel's vote, followed up by day 43, and Tangent, myself, and Bluey, we were well off.
Yeah.
We were all in the 30s.
That's okay.
Way too optimistic.
Way too optimistic. All right. So
Hang on, let me just bring this up. Can you do mine for me, Jexxa?
Oh, again, yeah, right. Just because it's you. Hang on, I've got to switch off this.
Thanks, mate. I get a pass. And also, mate, you've got a on your MetaMask there, mate. You've got to sign a transaction.
That's right. That's a fake one anyway. That's good.
Yeah, I'll go 27.5. Dawsy78, congratulations, bitch tit of the week.
40,
Nice.
43 OG. What did you say, mate?
27.5 or 0.275.
All right, done. I'll get that in. Alex, you putting your vote in, mate?
Sure, I'll do.
You got it. Have you clicked on the form?
I did.
All right, cool.
And everyone.
How much?
Sorry, Alex.
0.26.
0.26. Yeah, cool. I better have a look at a chart because that's helped me every other week.
25.
Hey, I better tell everyone in the chat. You guys can post your calls in the chat, but you've got to go to the link to put it in. Jexxa won't be putting in your links.
No, you just put in your own guesses. That's right. Everyone's on the ball, I think, with that now. We've got everyone all on the same page. All right.
Now, Tin Top, you're putting in the wrong Hedron. Like, don't put that in there, mate. Don't put that in there. That's, guys, it's not whatever. Hang on. Do I need to go to? I think I need to go to YouTube. Yeah, I'll bring up the one that it is, guys. It's the official one is Hedron Crypto, t.me, Hedron Crypto. It's not any. That's correct, isn't it, Alex?
Yep.
It's not t.me Hedron. It's t.me Hedron Crypto. Make sure you go to the right one.
So pretty much we all think sideways action, hey, this week.
Yeah, I've put a little, hopefully a little bit up.
What do you reckon?
Not crazy. I put around 27. So
It feels a lot like Pulse, doesn't it? Like the Pulse sacrifice.
yeah,
It does.
Feels pretty similar.
yeah, we had a bit of a washout, and then and I think that the chart had bottomed out anyway, and was starting to just make a nice structure. So yeah, a combination of PulseX sacrifice being done and a lot more HEX now removed from the market. Who knows?
So if Hedron launches the start of Feb, and all of a sudden people will start piling in all these like Quattro Cinco stakes, making these Quattro Cincos, collecting the 10x bonus. Like, are we talking like by mid-Feb that sort of flows on to price, or end of Feb? Like, I mean, it's going to have an effect on price, you would think, hey?
It's going to depend how many people are piling those in who were already either thinking of selling or already in the process of selling, right? Like, for it to have any kind of short-term effect. But I think long-term, tons of Quattro Cincos is going to be a very positive thing.
Slow burn thing, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You've got to get market acceptance, and then you've got to get price discovery, and there's a whole lot that has to. You've got to build confidence.
It's going to take some time.
What's going to happen? Yeah. Yep. No, I reckon. So I'm not sure if everyone has, if you haven't checked out on my stream on my YouTube Jexxa HEX Save, I've done a video on price feedback loops, and Hedron's another example where it will fit into that ecosystem of all these tools that we've got laying in front of us now, where we don't have to sell things. What are we got to do? Never mint things now. So there's all these price positive tools that are coming to us from the community itself. So these aren't random meme coin shit things that are coming here. These are tools that bolt on to the things we know and love that just add more value. So yeah, this is all just good things to come. I think more tools for us to play with and better ways to amplify what we already have in front of us.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what this whole ecosystem looks like in 5 years from now. You know, it's like there's going to be so much.
You should be very excited about what's being laid at your feet right now.
Yeah.
The next 6 to 8 months, especially.
Yeah.
We're going to look back on these few like months of time, like very, very nostalgically in a couple of years. That's my prediction.
Definitely. Yep, for sure.
We're going to be joking around about how we were just suffering through this, never-ending waiting, period of just waiting. It's almost like a rite of passage to be in a Richard Hart project, don't you reckon?
We'll do your time.
You gotta pay your dues.
Do you think that was his whole method, was to teach you delayed gratification from the very start?
Maybe.
Got to wait too.
That does sound cool though.
Hey, did you guys hear the shout out in the intro? Did you hear that shout out? uNrekt shout out?
No.
No.
All right. Well, let's finish up. We've done everything. Once again, thanks everyone. Jexxa, Tangent, Bloobum, Alex. We're going to see you next week, and on the outro, maybe you guys can listen in to hear that the Easter egg in our new intro.
Man, uNrekt. Thank goodness.